avoid a 1-4 start, Brew, which wouldn't doom the season. But since 1970, only 16 teams made the playoffs at 1-4. Jeff Schrebeck of The Athletic writing, Harbaugh must keep this team afloat until it presumably gets healthier following the bye week. If this tailspin continues, the offseason changes within the organization could be wide-reaching. Coach, you want to start here? You love these hot seat combos.
Well, what's it based off of? Well, because
right there, it could be wide-reaching.
Okay, so the guy hasn't earned the benefit of the doubt. So after 4 games where you're decimated from an injury perspective, now suddenly he can't coach. Suddenly he doesn't know how to run the organization. They've been pretty good for a long time. He's won a Super Bowl, but now they've got a 4-game stretch where it's not very good. So,
see, I don't think it's the 4-game stretch.
Let's have wide-ranging changes.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I agree with Coach in that, and where I disagree with the article was he has to keep them afloat. Like, I'm not looking at that. I don't care if he keeps them afloat or not. To me, I do think Harbaugh should be on the hot seat. But it's nothing to do with staying afloat. It is if they go out. Now, look, let me first start here where I wouldn't think he should be on the hot seat. If Lamar misses the next several games, they already have these other injuries, and the season ends up being kind of a lost season because of injury, then I don't have a problem with Harbaugh staying. But if they go out like they have these last few years, Lamar gets healthy, they start rolling, make the playoffs, and then they go out kind of like they have when you're expecting them to win and they lose in the playoffs, because the things that have failed them in the playoffs are things you typically would look at the coaching staff for. A lot of penalties. They get a lot of penalties. Then stuff like lack of discipline, taunting penalties, unsportsmanlike penalties, forgetting kind of your game plan like they did against Kansas City a couple years ago, not running the football, bad play calling, which we've already seen this year. Like, that's the stuff that if that hurts them in a playoff game and they lose, that's when I'm looking at Harbaugh. Because, Coach, sometimes you just need a new voice. He's been there 18 years. Andy Reid got fired after 14 years. Belichick essentially got fired. Like, you can get fired even as you're a good coach.
Came early. Like that, the Super Bowl.
He was in trouble before he got Lamar.
He was in trouble. A lot of people think the reason they switched from Flacco to Lamar was because they needed a spark and it had been a long enough time. We can show you his, the first 7 years versus last 10 years, and that's not including this season. It's that years with a playoff win that jumps out at you. 6 of his first 7 years, they won a playoff game. 3 of the last decade, they've won a playoff game. We're talking about if that continues. Here is what I think is fair, Coach. Oh, go ahead. Go.
Well, so the Andy Reid decision, that was a plus decision for Philly. They're like, wow, we really nailed that one.
It has been,
Andy went up to Kansas City and won back-to-back Super Bowls and drafted the next generational talent at quarterback.
They got new voice. Yeah, Philly's got 2 Super Bowls. It's a new
they've been
voice.
on 3 coaches.
It's just don't you think sometimes
coaches?
Yeah.
Don't you think sometimes you need a new voice? Even it's not saying Harbaugh's not a good coach. I think he would get another job if he wants it in the league.
No, I just think that Andy Reid is a really good. Maybe it's not apples to apples, but it's not like Andy Reid was washed up. He went out and lit it up in Kansas.
Yeah, I actually love the direction of this and bringing up Andy Reid, because I think that actually at the end of the day, firing Andy Reid was the wrong move, because Andy Reid is obviously a great coach, and just because you're going through a rough patch and whatnot doesn't mean that someone should get fired. And I know this is going to ruffle some feathers. Andy Reid was clearly a better coach than Harbaugh, even though with the Philadelphia Eagles, even though he didn't win the Super Bowl. Andy Reid had way more success, and without the Super Bowl was already on pace to become the most winningest head coach in the history of the NFL. And again, he was doing it with quarterbacks that were not Hall of Famers. And when you're not winning with a Lamar Jackson, someone who's clearly an all-time great talent, and you're not getting over this hump, there is a problem. And it's one thing because some people say, well, they can beat people, but they can't just beat the Chiefs. And it's like, well, you struggle to beat the Bills. And now you have other teams like the Philadelphia Eagles winning a Super Bowl. You have the Rams winning a Super Bowl. You have the 49ers getting to multiple Super Bowls. Like, you have these other teams that are still having, it's not like the Chiefs are just winning every single year and just winning, 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 winning. Then I can understand. It's like, well, you're just going up against Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, right? Like, what are you going to do? But that's not the case. And as soon as you saw the Philadelphia Eagles absolutely dominate and roll the Kansas City Chiefs, that put the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens on notice. It's like, look what the Eagles just did. Stop telling me that you can't get past the Kansas City Chiefs. Stop just saying, well, what do you want us to do? It's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like, that's not acceptable. The Philadelphia Eagles found a way. They found a way, and they did it in the most important game of the year, the Super Bowl. It wasn't just like a random regular season game here. And so that becomes the problem. And so it's not, you can't just compare it to Andy Reid or compare it to this coach or compare it to that coach, because it has to be an organizational thing of like, what are you doing for this team? Are you crucial to this team's success? And again, I would argue that the Eagles made the mistake because, right, they hired Chip Kelly, then they had to fire him, then they got Doug Peterson, they had to fire him, and they got Nick Sirianni, and Sirianni was on the brink of being fired until they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So like, it's, you know, it's not the easiest decision here, but I would say this, that it's just like, you would love this idea of having Lamar Jackson with a great offensive coach, but then begs the question, who is that offensive coach? And if there was an offensive coach available, what you would want then is to hire him as at least a coordinator. But like, what coordinator right now that you would then hire as an offensive head coach that you would have the utmost confidence that he could run an offense at a high level and be a head coach that you wouldn't have been able to at least hire as an offensive coordinator? You understand what I'm saying? Like, some of the coordinators that were available at the time, Ben Johnson, Cliff Kingsbury, Kubiak. I'm trying to think of anyone else on the more recent side. Those are the three that kind of come to mind. You would have either had to have made them a head coach, like Ben Johnson, or you could have hired them as coordinators. You obviously can't hire Ben Johnson. Now, Ben Johnson's already been hired. If you were going to take a big swing, you fire Harbaugh, and you'd say, hey, we know Ben Johnson hasn't been a head coach yet, but like, we got to try something here. We got to take a big swing. Boom. You do that. And they couldn't do that. So now any of the other coaches that are available, what offensive coordinator right now are you like, oh gosh, everyone just can't wait to get him? And he won't want to be another coordinator. He is going to be a head coach. Like, Ben Johnson wasn't going to take another job as a coordinator somewhere. So like, what offensive coach are you looking for? I don't know. And what are you going to do? You're going to bring in Brian Flores. Now you're going to fire one defensive coach and bring in another defensive coach. Like, it's like, if you didn't have Lamar Jackson as your quarterback, then it's just like, I don't know. And then again, you're now going to try to take another swing with a defensive coach who hasn't necessarily had a ton of success being a head coach, but you think maybe a Brian Flores. Like, maybe if you believe that, hey, you know what, Brian Flores can maybe build a better defense than Harbaugh, like, you're still kind of playing this game where you're kind of like, we're kind of moving forward, kind of not, it's like, what do you do? You're kind of caught in between here. And then are you going to hire a college head coach? It's like, that's a swing, and I would almost be more interested in that. But it's just like, where's the coach coming from at this point? That becomes the problem. That becomes the problem. If this was a Ben Johnson market or something, then you would say, yeah, you know what, we something's got to give, something's got to change. We got to take this to the next step here. Then I could understand that, but it's just, that's not out there right now. Now, what could be interesting, and there might be even like a little bit of a battle over it, is if you do get a Mike McDaniel with the Miami Dolphins, and now he is arguably the best offensive mind who could be looking for a new job, who you could get as a coordinator, who you wouldn't have to hire as a head coach. Maybe some team will take a swing and say, you know what, we the Titans are like, you know what, we're getting rid of our coach. We'll bring him. You know, we know things got a little weird in Miami, but we believe in him. He just doesn't have the quarterback. We're going to bring him over here. Like, that's technically a possibility here. If Shane Steichen was about to get fired, you could have brought him as a coordinator. And so it's like if that opportunity rises, although Shane Steichen is definitely not going to get fired now, the next one up is McDaniel. And you're like, all right, that seems to be an offensive coach. We can still keep Harbaugh here. We can still keep that continuity here. But we can bring in someone who we believe that can maybe finally make this offense transcend it, that we can have Lamar take an even bigger step in his growth and development, because there's still room to grow and develop. You don't just reach this end and like, hooray, we reached the top now. Like, there's still more there. Now, the concern still is the defense, because as soon as you lost McDonald to the Seattle Seahawks, the defense has changed. And so it's just like, you know, you got to have answers for that as well. So you can make excuses for injuries. That's fine. But you also have to admit that things have not been good enough. And you can say, well, great regular season, and we've been top in the league, and we were in the AFC. That's all well and good, but if you can't get the job done, if you can't make the moves when they matter most, then what's the point? What's the point? And I do think that we've seen coaching malpractice these last couple of years in the playoffs. I do what they did in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs was just horrendous. Absolutely, positively horrendous. And even in 24, like, you know, yeah, it was a little mess, and we could say, oh, Lamar Jackson, this and that. Like, it was still not good play calling. It just wasn't. And when you're looking around the league, when you see teams step up in the biggest moments again last year, especially the Philadelphia Eagles, you could see it. You could see the fingerprints of that coaching staff all over the game plan, especially the Super Bowl. You saw Kel Moore all over that offense, and you saw Fangio all over that defense. All over it. That matters. That those things matter. You see Andy Reid and Spags all over it, and that's why that's why I've, you know, criticized the Buffalo Bills, because, like, I don't see Sean McMurray, don't see, you know, whatever offensive coordinator it is, depending on the year, for Josh Allen and the Bills. Like, the opening drive for Josh Allen against the Kansas City Chiefs was awful, and I hate it. And then you see what the Kansas City Chiefs look like, and you're like, oh wow, that's a team that's ready. That's a team that has a great script. I'm looking at Brady, the coordinator for the Bills, and looking at Josh Allen. I'm like, what the heck was that? What was that? And then you see Spags dial up the pressure on that final play against Josh. Like, you see the perfection. You see Andy Reid dial up the perfect play. He did it against the Ravens to ice the game. That beautiful throw to ice the game for the first down, as well as the first down play call to ice the game against the Bills. Like, you see the play calling. You see the genius moment. You see it. You're like, that's coaching. That is coaching. That is execution. That is a team that's ready to play. When could you say that? The closest we got to that was against the Steelers last year. And it was like, great. They realized that they're just going to be able to run the ball nonstop, unapologetically. And it was great. I loved it. It was great. It's the closest we got. And it was against the Russell Wilson and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was like, okay, still good. But then we didn't see it in the moments that it actually truly mattered. That's a problem. Harbaugh has to get some blame for that. And now, this is probably not exactly, but it was last year. Colin did this last year. And so, you know, I don't know exactly what it looks like right now, and I'm just not going to dig into it too much right now. But he compared Mike McCarthy and Harbaugh, and they essentially have like identical resumes. Identical resumes, playoff resume, win-loss record, it's like almost like identical. People are like, no one's talking about how amazing Mike McCarthy is as a coach, and Mike McCarthy has a Super Bowl, and he did it with Aaron Rodgers, and et cetera, et cetera. And again, it's probably slightly different now that McCarthy is not coaching and now Harbaugh is, but and Harbaugh got another playoff win now against the Steelers. So it's probably slightly different than from when Colin first, when he originally did it, but you're just like, oh wow, these guys have a ridiculously similar resume here. Yeah. McCarthy doesn't have a job right now. Harbaugh does. And I know Ravens fans are starting to get really fed up with Harbaugh. Really fed up with him. And you know, this is what I said about the Chicago Bears last year. Like, it is a shame that teams aren't run this way. Where you can't just be like, you know, we're going to keep Harbaugh on defense. We're going to keep him to be like, I don't know, consult like an important part of this team, like the president of the team, whatever it is. But you know what? We want a different head coach now. Like we're just going to move him in a different position that he can still definitely exert his influence. And if it doesn't work well with the new coach, we can still always put him back there, you know, et cetera, like the way how some other companies have the freedom and flexibility to run, but it's obviously not like that in sports. It's just like, no, you're fired, you're done. And it's a tough spot for the Ravens because the Ravens are going to be like, he's been our coach for years and years and years and years, and the grass isn't always greener. And if the conclusion is that, well, hey, if you take it from the other side of it, where you're like, Harbaugh is not to blame. It's Lamar Jackson. He's not clutch enough. He's not good enough in the playoffs. Well, then it would be like, well, then you trade Lamar. Then you do a box office play and say, we can't win with Lamar. I know it sounds crazy. We got to move on from him, right? Like, I don't know if that's then your actual conclusion. Then you got to have the courage to do it. You got to have the courage to do it. You got to say, yeah, Lamar's amazing. Lamar's awesome. Don't think he can get it done in the big game. We're going to trade him for a boatload and we're going to rebuild. You know, I don't know, because otherwise you're just going in circles. You're just going in circles. It is the most the most played out definition of insanity. Doing the same thing again and again and again and expecting different results. Why are we expecting anything to be different right now? Just a tough one. It really is. So, I'm a supporter of hot seats. I'm a supporter of holding people accountable. I think it's a little disingenuous of not on purpose, what some of the conversations are around this team right now with the injuries and whatnot and the success. But I think for a while people kind of used the cop-out of like, well, the Kansas City Chiefs, like, come on, what do you want them to do? And Nick perpetuates that a lot too, because he's like, well, you know, no one can beat the Chiefs. And then when you see what the Eagles do, you saw what the Bucks did, like they popped that bubble. You can beat the Chiefs. It's not acceptable to be like, oh, what do you want to do? You know, it's hard to beat Mahomes. All right, well, Jalen Hurts did, and the Philadelphia Eagles supported Jalen Hurts in a way where Jalen Hurts has now played better against the Kansas City Chiefs in both Super Bowls than Lamar Jackson ever has in a playoff game against the Bills or the Chiefs. That matters. And yet, I know Ravens fans to their core believe Lamar Jackson is better than Jalen Hurts, and that's fine. That's totally fine. That can be a 100% true statement. Yet, one team is able to build a team and create an environment, coach staff, whatever it may be, that gets the best out of their quarterback in the biggest moments, in the most important moments. And this Baltimore Ravens team fails to do that year after year after year. There has to be answers. And if the conclusion is, well, Jalen Hurts is clutch and Lamar Jackson isn't, it's like, all right, well, then you have to figure that then you then make a game plan appropriate to that, then build a team that's appropriate to that then, or move on from Lamar Jackson. And if it's a coaching issue, then it's like you got to change coaches then. Like there has to be an answer. There has to be a solution. There has to be action. There can't be inaction. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Baltimore Ravens? Do you think Harbaugh should be on the hot seat? Do you think he's responsible for the fact that this team has just underperformed in the biggest moments? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.